Hi, I'm Palmer Quinn, 35, living in Greenville, South Carolina, raising my two kids on my own since my husband passed 2 years ago. That afternoon, I was on the floor of the playroom with Rhett, my 8-year-old, helping him finish a massive Lego spaceship. Sloan, my 6-year-old, was coloring quietly in the corner. Normal Tuesday or so, I thought. My phone buzzed on the carpet. A text from my brother Weston. Just 8 words, be home by 7. The kids need to be there. No explanation, no emoji, nothing. Cold like that. Before I could even type back another text lit up the screen this time from Brielle next door. Something is off with your brother tonight. I just saw him shoving a thick folder into his car. Palmer. Don't trust him. My heart felt like it dropped. I stared at the messages, heart racing, trying to make sense of it. I stepped into the hallway to call Weston. Straight to voicemail. Called our parents. They picked up, voices shaky, then suddenly were busy and hung up. Their faces flashed in my mind, pale, avoiding my eyes. I never got an answer. The next morning, 7:12 on the dot, 3 hard knocks shook the front door. I opened it to 2 Greenville County deputies and a CPS caseworker holding paperwork. Emergency removal order. Imminent danger. They walked past me, took Rhett's hand, lifted Sloan into their arms, and carried my screaming babies out to the van. I reached for them, and a deputy blocked me. Just like that, my kids were gone. If you've ever had family turn on you in ways you never saw coming, drop Greenville in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not the only one who's been through hell because of the people who were supposed to protect us. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happened next. Because it only got darker from here. The county van disappeared around the corner, taking my entire world with it. I stood frozen on the porch until the deputy's cruiser pulled away. One of them handed me a stack of papers still warm from the printer, emergency ex parte custody order, signed by a judge I'd never heard of, granting temporary sole custody to my brother Weston and his wife Tegan until further hearing. The affidavit attached was dated 10 weeks earlier. 10 weeks. He had already filed this, sat on it, waited for the perfect moment to hit send on the final lies. I stumbled back inside and opened the security app on my phone. Every single camera in the house showed the same gray screen offline. Weston had installed the whole Ring system himself 18 months ago, right after the funeral. You shouldn't be alone with the kids at night, he'd said, hugging me too tight. I never changed the admin password. He still had full access. He'd killed the feeds before they even knocked. My hands shook so hard I could barely dial the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, where Rhett trains 3 evenings a week. The receptionist picked up, cheerful, until I gave my name. Silence. Then quietly, "Ma'am, we received notice from Child Protective Services this morning. We're not allowed to release any information or let you on the premises until the case is resolved." Same story at Sloan's daycare. The director actually started crying on the phone, but the rule was the rule. I called my parents next. Dad answered on the 3rd ring. Richard speaking. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" A long pause, then Mom's voice in the background, muffled, panicked. Dad cleared his throat. "Palmer, this isn't a good time. We'll call you back." Click. I tried again an hour later. Straight to voicemail. Same with the house phone. Texts sat on delivered, no read receipts. My own parents ghosting me the same day my children were ripped away. I tore through every drawer looking for anything that might help. Found the folder where I keep the kids' medical records. Half the pages were missing vaccination cards, the pediatrician's notes about Rhett's old bruises from sparring, even the accident report from when Sloan fell off the monkey bars last spring. All the stuff someone could twist if they wanted to paint a picture. By 4 o'clock, I was pacing the living room, barefoot, hair unbrushed, talking out loud to nobody. I opened my laptop and started Googling family law attorneys in Greenville. Most of them had waiting lists. The few who answered wanted $10,000 retainers just to look at the paperwork. My emergency fund was $3,000 tops. At 6, the sun dropped behind the pines and the house went dead quiet. No cartoons in the background, no Rhett yelling that his sister was hogging the markers, no little feet running to greet me when I walked through the door. Just the hum of the refrigerator and my own pulse in my ears. I curled up on the playroom rug surrounded by half-finished Lego pieces and cried until my throat was raw. Then I stopped crying because there was no one to hear it anyway. Around midnight, I dragged myself to the kitchen and forced down half a yogurt I found in the fridge. That's when the first wave of real terror hit. What were they telling my kids right now? That mommy didn't want them anymore. That mommy was dangerous. Rhett was old enough to understand pieces of it. Sloane still believed whatever the grown-ups said. I opened the front door and stared across the dark street at Brielle's house. Her porch light was still on. I thought about walking over, banging on the door, begging her to explain that text. But I didn't. If she knew something, she would have told me more already. If she didn't, I'd just look insane. Instead, I sat on the cold hardwood floor of the hallway back against the wall and waited for morning like it might never come. That was the longest night of my life, and it was only the first. The knock came so soft I almost missed it over the hum of the air conditioner. I crept to the back door hard in my throat and cracked it open. Brielle stood on the bottom step in an oversized hoodie hood, upholding a tiny black USB drive between two fingers like it might explode. "Get inside," I whispered. She slipped past me and I locked the door behind her. We didn't bother with the lights. I led her straight to the office, plugged the drive into my laptop, and hit play on the only audio file. Weston's voice filled the room, first low and irritated. He was on speaker with his wife Tegan. "I told Richard and Diane if they don't sign those letters saying they've noticed concerning behavior around the kids, I'll make sure the lake house goes to charity when they're gone." Mom cried. Dad just stared at the floor. "They'll sign by tomorrow." Tegan laughed. "Good. The more family members who say they're worried, the faster the judge rubber stamps emergency custody." Another clip. Weston alone in the car talking to himself. Appointment with the lawyer Tuesday to finalize the affidavit. Need to add something about Rhett coming home with new bruises every week from that stupid jiu-jitsu class. Say Palmer refuses to stop it even when the coach called her. One more solid lie and it's over. My blood turned to ice. There was a third file. Weston on the phone with someone I didn't recognize, reading aloud from what sounded like a draft document. Subject exhibits erratic behavior following the death of her spouse. Frequently leaves minors unattended. Visible marks on the 8-year-old male consistent with non-accidental injury. Every sentence twisted something real into something sick. Brielle watched my face the whole time. When it ended, she finally spoke. "He borrowed my SUV last Wednesday to pick up early Christmas stuff for the church drive. I forgot the dash cam records cabin audio too. I only checked it tonight because I couldn't shake that text I sent you. Palmer, I am so sorry I didn't bring this sooner." I couldn't answer. I just ejected the drive and clutched it like it was made of gold. "How long is this recording?" I managed. 43 minutes total. Time-stamped. GPS metadata still attached. My brother's a deputy. He says this is the kind of thing they can't ignore. I called the only private investigator in Greenville who had answered my messages earlier that day. Guy named Harlan Graves. Told him I had new evidence and needed him tonight. His reply came in under 10 seconds. "Weston's attorney already sent me a cease and desist letter this afternoon. Threatened to sue me and revoke my license if I take your case. I'm out." I hung up and stared at the screen. 4 other PIs I'd emailed had gone radio silent the moment I mentioned the Pierce name. Weston had money from Tegan's family, old Greenville money, and he was using every dime to bury me before I could even fight. Brielle reached across the desk and closed my laptop. "Listen, my cousin works forensics for the sheriff's office. Off the clock, no chain of custody yet, but he'll look at it tonight and tell us if it's enough to force CPS to back off. Give me until morning." I handed her the drive without hesitation. At that point, she was the only person in the world who hadn't slammed a door in my face. After she left, I sat in the dark office and opened the family group chat on my phone, the one that had been dead silent for days. I typed a single message to Weston: "I know what you did." The 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Then nothing. He left me on red. I refreshed the chat every 30 seconds until the battery died. Sleep never came. I kept replaying his voice in my head, the casual way he talked about manufacturing bruises on my son, the way he laughed with Tegan, like this was just another Tuesday chore. I thought about driving to their house in Verde, kicking the door down, dragging my kids out myself. Instead, I sat on the floor with my dead phone and counted the hours until sunrise. When the sky finally turned gray, I brewed coffee. I didn't drink, and waited for Brielle to text. She did just after 7. "My cousin says the audio is clean. He's writing an unofficial statement. Take this straight to your first hearing tomorrow. And Palmer, lock your doors tonight." I locked every deadbolt in the house, set the alarm for the first time since Weston installed it, and sat in the living room with the USB copy I'd made clutched in my fist. Tomorrow, the judge would see exactly who my brother really was. The courtroom door swung open hard enough to bang against the wall. Everyone turned. Brielle marched straight down the aisle in jeans and a blazer, clutching a manila envelope, and a sheriff's deputy right behind her. The bailiff started to intercept, but Judge Harlan Brooks raised one hand. "Let her approach." Weston went rigid at the petitioner's table. Tegan grabbed his arm nails, digging in. Their lawyer, a slick downtown type in a $3,000 suit, shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Sit down, counselor," the judge snapped. "Ma'am, state your name for the record." Brielle didn't flinch. "Brielle Morrison. I live next door to Palmer Quinn. I have time-stamped evidence that directly contradicts the petitioner's affidavit." Weston's face drained of color. I'd never seen him look small until that moment. The judge took the envelope, slid out the forensic report and the USB, and handed everything to the clerk. "We're going to recess. This recording and its chain of custody will be reviewed by the county lab immediately. Court will reconvene when I have answers. Deputies, keep Mr. Pierce in the building." Weston tried to stand. "Your Honor, this is sit. Down." The gavel cracked like a gunshot. The gallery erupted in whispers. I just sat there, shaking, tears running hot down my cheeks for the first time since the removal. 2 days later, I was at the kitchen table picking at cold coffee when my phone rang with a number I didn't know. "Ms. Quinn. This is Sergeant Delgado, Greenville County Sheriff's Office. We have a warrant for Weston Pierce on charges of perjury, filing a false report, and obstruction of justice. He's in custody." I dropped the mug. It shattered across the tile. They found more when they searched his house. Printed drafts of the fake affidavit with handwritten notes in the margins. Emails to Tegan coordinating exactly what each concerned family member would say, and a second USB with deleted fragments of the same cabin recording he'd tried to wipe it after Brielle's car was returned. The arrest hit the local news by 6 o'clock. Old high school classmates started texting apologies. The daycare director called, crying, begging forgiveness for following CPS orders. Even the jiu-jitsu coach sent a long email saying he'd testify anytime I needed. But the kids still weren't home. CPS sent a new caseworker, a tired-looking woman named Adrienne Carter, to the door the next morning. She handed me a letter pending full reevaluation of the home and new psychological assessments for the minors. The emergency order remained in effect. Translation: they weren't taking any chances until every I was dotted. I asked when I could see them. She said supervised visitation could start as soon as the following week, 1 hour at their office with a guard in the room. 1 hour. After everything. I hired Matthew Callahan that same afternoon. He'd already left 3 voicemails while the news was breaking. Former prosecutor, 20 years fighting CPS cases, hated dirty affidavits more than anything. His retainer was still brutal, but he cut it in half when I played the recording over speaker. He listened without interrupting, then said, We're not asking for visitation, Palmer. We're demanding immediate return and termination of the temporary order. And we're adding sanctions against every adult who signed those lying letters. I signed the contract with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. Weston made bail the next day, $500,000 cash from Tegan's parents. Reporters camped outside their gate in Verde. He wouldn't look at the cameras. I didn't sleep. I printed every page of the forensic report, highlighted every lie, and taped them across the dining room wall like a war room. Every time I walked past, I added another post-it dates, names, threats. The house stayed too quiet. Rhett's Lego spaceship sat unfinished on the playroom floor, exactly where he left it. Sloane's stuffed giraffe was still propped against the couch, waiting for bedtime stories that never came. I kept the new USB copy in a fire safe bolted to the closet floor. Some nights I took it out just to hold it like proof this nightmare had a crack in it. The first hearing after the arrest was scheduled for the following Friday. Matt promised me the kids would be sitting next to me by then. I wanted to believe him. Matt Callahan's office smelled like old paper and fresh victory. He spread folders across the conference table and got straight to work. First target, Coach Derek Ramsey at Upstate Jiu-Jitsu Academy. Matt called him while I sat there twisting a paperclip into knots. Derek picked up on the second ring. His voice went cold the second Matt said my name. "Look, man, I feel terrible, but I've got 20 families here. I can't get dragged into court." Click. Matt didn't even blink. He printed the arrest report, highlighted the perjury charge, and drove over himself. Came back 2 hours later with a signed affidavit. Derek detailing every bruise Rhett ever had was from normal sparring timestamps from class videos, even a text I'd sent thanking him for teaching my son confidence. Next, he hit the daycare. The director handed over attendance logs showing I never once dropped Sloane off late or picked her up erratic. 2 teachers wrote statements about how attached she was to me. By the end of the week, we had 12 sworn declarations in a neat stack. Then came the first supervised visit. The CPS building sat off Lawrence Road, gray and windowless. They led me to a room with plastic chairs and a one-way mirror. Sloane ran in first, saw me, and froze. Then the screaming started, high, broken sobs that tore me in half. She backed into the corner, yelling, "No, you left us over and over." Rhett followed, arms crossed, eyes on the floor. When I opened my arms, he didn't move. The social worker had to nudge him forward. He let me hug him stiff as a board, then pulled away and sat silently for the full hour. When the guard said time was up, he walked out without looking back. I cried in the parking lot until mall security asked if I needed help. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Dad's voice, thin and shaking. "Meet us at Port City, Java on Augusta Road. Please. 10 minutes. I almost didn't go. But I went. Richard and Diane were already in the corner booth, both looking 10 years older. Mom's hand shook so badly coffee sloshed over the rim. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Diane spoke first, barely a whisper. "Weston told us if we didn't sign those 3 letters saying we were worried about the kids' safety, he'd make sure the lake house and every dime we have left went straight out of the will. He said we'd die in a home, with nothing." Dad finally looked up. He put the papers in front of us the night before CPS came. Said it was just insurance. We thought he was overreacting, not this. I leaned forward. "You watched them take my children and said nothing." Mom started sobbing quietly into a napkin. Dad's voice cracked. "The sheriff came to the house yesterday. They're investigating us for aiding a false report. Possible charges. We're terrified, Palmer." I felt nothing. No pity. Just cold. "You should be." Diane reached for my hand. I pulled back. "We'll testify," she rushed out. "Anything you need. We'll tell the judge everything. Just, please don't let them take us away from the grandchildren too." I stood up. "You already did that yourself." I walked out without finishing my coffee. That night, Matt filed emergency motions immediate return of children sanctions against Richard and Diane Quinn for knowingly submitting false statements and a request for unsupervised visitation starting the next day. The judge signed the visitation order before 9 a.m. The kids still weren't home, but for the first time in weeks, the front door felt a little less empty. Dr. Regina Holt's official report landed in my inbox with a simple subject line: Final Psychological Evaluation. 47 pages. I printed every one and read it on the living room floor until the words blurred. She had met with Rhett and Sloan 4 times each, separately and together. The conclusion was brutal in its clarity. Both children exhibited classic signs of induced parental alienation. Rhett repeated phrases he couldn't have invented on his own. Mom chose work over us. Mom gets mad and hurts people. Sloan wet the bed every night since removal and refused to say my name, calling me only her when forced. Dr. Holt laid the blame squarely on Weston and on Richard and Diane for reinforcing the narrative during their court-approved phone calls. She attached drawings Sloan had done stick-figure families where I had red, angry eyes and devil horns. Rhett had drawn himself standing between me and his little sister with a shield. The doctor recommended immediate reunification with intensive therapy, warning that prolonged separation would cause permanent attachment damage. Matt read it in his office, jaw tight. "This is a slam dunk," he said. "I'm filing the civil suit against your parents today. Emotional distress, intentional infliction. The works. We won't wait for a trial date. The threat alone will keep them cooperative." He also attached the full forensic authentication of the cabin recording to a new motion demanding termination of the emergency order. Adrian Carter from CPS called personally that afternoon. His voice was different, almost apologetic. "Ms. Quinn, in light of the psychological report and the verified audio evidence, we are lifting all supervision requirements effective immediately. You may have the children for 6-hour blocks daily starting tomorrow, transitioning to overnight this weekend. Full return hearing is set for next Friday." I had to sit down on the kitchen floor to keep from collapsing. The first unsupervised day, I picked them up from the temporary foster placement on the east side. Sloan clung to the social worker's leg until I knelt down and opened my arms. She ran, then burying her face in my neck so hard it hurt. Rhett hung back, scuffing his shoe on the sidewalk. But when I said, "Come on, buddy, let's go home," he climbed into the back seat without a word. We stopped for ice cream on Woodruff Road because I didn't know what else to do with 6 hours of freedom. Sloan got chocolate all over her shirt and laughed for the first time in weeks. Rhett asked if he could go back to jiu-jitsu soon. I told him yes, and watched his shoulders relax a fraction. That night, I read them 3 books each, tucked them into their own beds, and sat in the hallway listening to them breathe until dawn. The civil complaint against Richard and Diane hit the court docket the next morning. Matt made sure they were served at the country club during Wednesday breakfast. Dad called in a panic offering to sign anything, begging me to drop it. I let it ring. Mom left a voicemail that just said, "We were wrong," followed by 40 seconds of crying. I deleted it. By the end of the week, the kids were staying overnight. Rhett woke up screaming, once convinced I had disappeared again. Sloan started carrying her stuffed giraffe everywhere, even to the bathroom. Dr. Holt scheduled twice-weekly sessions for all 3 of us. CPS sent a new home visit team. They walked through the house, checked the fridge, asked the kids questions in their rooms. Adrian Carter signed the transition plan himself, full physical custody restored pending final hearing. The house started sounding like a home again. Cartoons in the morning, Rhett practicing kicks on the heavy bag in the garage. Sloan singing made-up songs while coloring on the kitchen table. I still slept with the bedroom door open and one ear tuned to the hallway, but the nightmares were mine now, not theirs. Judge Brooks called the courtroom to order with one sharp strike of the gavel. Rhett sat on my right leg, swinging, clutching my hand so hard his knuckles were white. Sloan was on my left, half asleep against my arm. They had never been inside a courthouse before today. Weston stood at the defendant's table in a cheap suit orange wristband still visible under the sleeve. Tegan wasn't there. The prosecutor spoke first. Your Honor, in exchange for a guilty plea to all counts, the state offers 7 years in the Department of Corrections. No early release, no contact with the minor children. Weston's lawyer tried to interrupt. The judge cut him off. Mr. Pierce, do you accept? Weston glanced at me, once eyes empty, then nodded. Yes, sir. The gavel fell again. 7 years. He avoided 20 if the case had gone to trial, but 7 real years behind bars was still 7 birthdays. 7 Christmases, 7 firsts. My kids would never share with their uncle. Judge Brooks turned to the custody portion. Matt laid out the final stack Dr. Holt's report, the forensic audio, the sworn statements, the children's own handwritten letters asking to come home. Richard and Diane sat in the back row, faces gray. Dad's hands shook on his knees. Mom kept dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. The judge didn't waste words. Emergency order terminated effective immediately. Sole legal and physical custody is awarded to Palmer Quinn. No visitation, no phone calls, no third-party contact. Then he looked straight at my parents. As for Richard and Diane Quinn, the court finds their repeated submission of knowingly false statements constituted child endangerment by facilitation of parental alienation. A permanent no-contact order is entered. Any violation will result in contempt charges and possible jail time. Mom let out a sound like a wounded animal. Dad just stared at the floor. Court officers led Weston away. He didn't look back. Outside in the hallway, reporters swarmed. Matt shielded us while I carried Sloane and held Rhett's hand tight. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted questions about forgiveness. I didn't answer. That afternoon, I signed papers on a new house in the Augusta Road area, 15 minutes across town. New schools, new everything. The moving company came the next morning. I didn't take much beds, toys, clothes, photos of my husband and the kids. Everything else went to charity. Richard and Diane showed up while the truck was loading. Dad tried to step onto the porch. I blocked the door. You heard the judge, I said. Leave. Mom reached for Sloane through the screen. My daughter hid behind my legs. Rhett stood beside me and said, clear as day, go away. They left without another word. Tegan's divorce filing hit the clerk's office 23 hours after Weston's plea. She kept the Verde house. He kept the prison cell. By sunset, the old house was empty. I turned the key in the lock for the last time and didn't look back. The new place had a fenced yard and a swing set already installed. Rhett ran straight for it. Sloane chased him, laughing like nothing had ever broken. I stood on the porch of our fresh start and finally breathed. Sunlight poured across the back deck of the new house on Sunday afternoon, warm even for Greenville in late fall. Rhett was in the yard practicing arm bars on a dummy we'd bought him for his 9th birthday. 2 weeks earlier, he had stepped onto the mat at the state jiu-jitsu championship calm and focused, and walked away with the gold medal around his neck. When the referee raised his hand, he looked straight into the stands at me and smiled the same crooked smile his dad used to give me after every win. Sloane sat cross-legged on the porch steps, tongue sticking out in concentration, finishing the last page of her kindergarten memory book before first grade officially started tomorrow. She had insisted on drawing our family herself 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. No angry red eyes this time. The nightmares stopped months ago. Dr. Holt signed off on the final session in July, saying both kids had processed the trauma and rebuilt secure attachment. Sloane still slept with her giraffe, but now it was because she liked how soft it was, not because she was afraid. A thick envelope showed up in the mailbox one morning in June, postmarked Columbia. Return address Richard and Diane Quinn. Inside were 3 handwritten letters, one from each of them, and one they claimed was from Weston at Broad River Correctional Institution. I never opened it. I wrote refused return to sender across the front in black marker and dropped it back in the box the same day. 2 more arrived over summer. Same treatment. They finally stopped. Weston has 6 years left on his sentence. Parole board denied his first request last month. Tegan sold the Verdi house and moved to Charlotte. Nobody forward her address. Brielle comes over most Fridays with pizza and wine. We sit on this same deck while the kids chase fireflies, and we don't talk about what happened anymore. We talk about school fundraisers and new recipes, and whether Rhett should test for his junior black belt early. I still work from home illustrations for children's books now instead of marketing graphics. The first book I illustrated after everything came out last spring. It's about a little fox who learns that home is the place that fights to keep you safe. It hit the local bestseller list for 8 weeks. Some nights I walk past the kids' rooms after they're asleep and just stand in the doorway watching them breathe. I don't take it for granted anymore. People ask if I've forgiven them. The answer is no, and I'm okay with that. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Some betrayals are so deep that the only healthy response is a closed door and a new address. Letting go of hate doesn't mean opening the gate again. It means I stopped wasting energy on people who proved they never deserved it. My children will grow up knowing exactly what family is supposed to look like: people who protect you, who fight for you, who choose you every single day. They will never wonder if love comes with conditions. They will never have to recover from the people who were supposed to love them most. That is the victory. So if you're watching this and someone in your own bloodline has hurt you in ways no outsider ever could hear me clearly, you do not owe them access to your peace. You do not owe them a second chance at your expense. Protecting your children and yourself is not cruelty. It is the purest form of love. We didn't just survive. We built something stronger on the other side. And we never looked back.